So start recording. Okay. Now, really quickly, before we go too much further, I'm going to bring up the internet. And I'm going to bring this down a little bit so it'll be easier to see. Come on. Don't do that. All right. There we go. All right. So what I'm going to do is we're going to go to Gumroad, right? And gumroad.com is kind of a place where you can go to get free kind of stuff, right? And you can see that you could donate, basically, right? But you can also do it through Blender Market as well. I think they charge like $1 for the Blender Market. But technically, you can get it for free, and you can always donate later on if you want to, right? So what we could do is we just do a search, right? Speedretopo, right? There we go. So just Speedretopo, one word. I'll bring up these things, and there's lots of things you can actually get from Blender, believe it or not. And it's this one right here. And what you can do is you can go to Add Cart, right? And I already did it earlier, but it brings up this. And what you do is you see how you can kind of basically put in 0 if you want to, right? And then kind of hit purchase. And what it'll do is it'll actually prompt you to put in your email, right? It'll kind of pull up this thing. So like if I put 0 here, it takes you to checkout. Hit checkout. What you do is put your email address in. Now you could just use the school email if you want to. It's kind of up to you. But this is really the only way I've found to get it anymore. Like, you used to be able to kind of get it like through Gumroad a different way, but I think they've kind of updated their site stuff. If you really like it, hey, throw a couple bucks their way, right? But I realize, you guys are high school students and possibly poor, being high school students. But you just put an email address in, and that will allow you to get it, right? Then you click get, and it basically will take you to the site where you download it, right? It'll give you bring it to a download site. The very bottom one, it says 2.9, like the 2.9 numbers. That's the newest version. So you probably want to go down to there to download it. I already kind of grabbed it, so we're not going to worry about it there. But once you hit get, it will take you to kind of the actual download page. And you'll see probably like 10 or 11 Speedretopo download buttons. And the bottom one, kind of, you'll see it's like the 2.9 numbers. That's the most recent one. But that's where you'd get it. Gumroad. Just type in Speedretopo, one word. Then you can click on, the cart. And ideally, at some point, donate, right? But I don't. Since you guys are high school, I don't really want you guys to have to spend money. So it's kind of one of those things for now. Hey, check it out, play with it. Technically, you don't have to use it if you want to use your normal modeling tools, but it's a cool add-on that I have, which is pretty cool. So that's how you could get that, and you'll see then, of course, we go to Edit, Preferences, and of course, what you do is you go to Add-on, right? The Add-on section, and what you do is you go Install, right? And then you can just go find, it just directly downloads it to download section. And you see there is Speedretopo, right? The 2.9 version 00. Oftentimes they're zips. Sometimes you'll see they're PY files. Doesn't really matter. Text Tools is there, right? Because we've grabbed Text Tools earlier. And you can just click on it and hit Install, right? And then usually what it'll do is it'll bring up this, right? You'll see it pops up to Speedretopo. You just check it on, right? You can, of course, turn on Enabled Add-ons Only, or you could kind of go in here to clear the Speedretopo search, right? It was just that usually when you install it, it kind of automatically searches for that, so you just check it on right then. And then, of course, you'll see it is in here, right? Like all these other things we've turned on. Modifier Tools we've turned on as an add-on. Auto Mirror, Edit Mesh Tools, Loop Tools, right? Those come with Blender. UV Magic, right? But see there's Speedretopo, check it on. Way down here, UV Magic, that comes with it. Text Tools doesn't, we downloaded that one as well. Check those on. But it's pretty easy to add an add-on, right? You just find it, download it, go to the add-on section of Preferences, Install, and just make sure it's checked on. And then you'll see it's actually available for you to use, right? So, how does this add-on work then for us? Well, the newest version's got a slightly minor updates to some of the interface stuff. So It pretty much works the same, but you just have to work it out a little bit, how sometimes to tweak it. But what you do is you basically, in this case, like I said, we're just going to introduce you guys to it today. We select the body, because what we want to do is we don't want to rebuild these sections yet, right? We're gonna focus on that next week. I figure it's nice if you guys just to spend some time just using it to build some like armor or a saddle for this creature, right? Where you don't have to worry about building it into something else. You just build it as its own separate object, just to get used to the tools and how they work, right? So that'll be kind of cool for that. Now you'll notice when you select this object here, right? A couple of things here. Let me minimize this. Remember, we select an object. Remember, in Blender, they're right next to kind of the outliner section, right? Because remember, we have this little section up here, which is our outliner. Right next to it's that little kind of V pointing to the left. Remember, you click on that, and it opens this up. Now, a lot of things are in here. Some item properties that you can type in numbers for, like the positions, rotations, certain tools, right? But it's usually more for your select tool, active tools. View controls, right? That's actually where you can lock the view to camera, right? And then set the camera up. That's very useful for our rendering stuff, right? But there's also the edit section, right? Or tools, right? Edit's got auto mirror, and it's got, particularly when we're in another mode, edit mode, you'll see things like loop tools, mesh tools, things like that. But there's that little tools tab down here, and you'll see that speedretopo is in there now, right? And you see it's got a lot of defaults that are already on, which is great. If you shift right mouse button, you'll see shift right mouse button will bring up kind of something like similar to like a marking menu, right? That'll kind of, you can just, move your cursor here to whatever you want to turn on. So shift right mouse button will bring that up. But what we want to do is we want to select the guy, because right, we've got our body. So remember, we just clicked on that, right? Boom. And then if this is up, tools, speedretopo will show up. And what we can do is we click Start Retopo. And what this does is a couple of things. One, you'll notice it actually creates a shrink wrap over here, right? And sometimes initially I found it's a little weird in the 2.9 update, right? We'll be able to look at this in a minute. But you will see there is shrink wrap over in our modifiers below our mirror, right? And you'll also notice that there is, in the outliner now, an object called retopo mesh, right? It created a whole new kind of object for this retopologizing to occur in, right? And it's applied shrink wrap. So the cool thing is it kind of turns on a lot of stuff, and it even sets up the reference object as the quad body. So that's what's kind of cool about this. It automatically applies a shrink wrap and a mirror, right, for this empty mesh. It creates a new mesh called retopo mesh. And it even sets the quad body as the reference. Now, one of the things that's cool about this is we'll notice over here there is this little what looks like a pencil with kind of a green curve to it, right? That is your annotation brush. This Blender has had for a long time. It allows you to kind of make notes in Blender for stuff. I believe you could even use it for grease pencil. That's how grease pencil works. So you actually could do 2D animation in Blender. It's pretty insane. But if I click on that to make it active, and the quick key for it's D, I found that kind of initially to get it going the first time you want to click on it, but normally it's D after that. What's really cool about this annotation brush is we can draw curves that stick to this mesh and then basically make a surface between them, kind of like a loft. So what I can easily do is say, hey, I'm going to build a kind of an interesting saddle here. So I think I'm going to want to left-click drag, right, to kind of draw a curve here. And then in the same direction, that's important. You have to draw in the same direction. You can't just go back the opposite direction, so you have to start back over here. And then I could left-click drag down here. And then I'll do another left-click drag down here. And you see how it kind of draws these curves directly on the mesh. And what I could do is I could go to Add Bsurface. And what that does, that actually creates some geometry in between there. Now, if I go down here, remember we have our little options down here. So if I click on that, right, although I think shift right mouse button will bring those things up as well. You see if I click on this little menu down here, I can actually tell it to have less cross sections this way, although I think 5 is pretty good. and I could have more follow this way, although I think that was good too. So what's cool about Bsurfaces is it's kind of like lofting in Blender. It actually basically is. You have some kind of curve, and it can create geometry kind of bridging between those curves. So that's kind of neat, right? You kind of get some of these cool options there. Now, I don't like the hidden wire because I like to see the mesh, so I turn that off. Backface culling is not a bad idea to have on also, so you don't see the other side. And you notice how it's got kind of flat shading on it? If you do recalculate normals, it does a smooth shade. So now you'll see we actually have started a mesh. That's kind of neat. Now the cool thing is I can keep doing stuff with this. So I could easily go through here and just kind of left-click drag this up to here. Left-click drag that up to there. Then add Bsurface. I usually do a recalculate normals after that. And you see we've started to be able to draw kind of this mesh on our surface. Now what's really cool is I can easily now hit Q, right, to go back to our tweak tool. It does kind of create this vertex that you might want to delete. So I'll just select that vertex and hit delete vertices. But you'll notice that the shrink wrap's on, and once we get out of that annotate, you know, if you want to move this retopo mesh kind of more into this collection, you can, right? You see if you want to change the projection type, I've actually often found that nearest surface point and on surface work a little better for me. But you can use kind of those defaults if you want to, but you can change those around. Remember, what shrink wrap basically does is it takes a geometry, and it's kind of like saran wrap, right? You take saran wrap, and you wrap it around something, and it tries to stick to that surface, right? That's basically what shrink wrap does. It's going to take whatever geometry you have, and it's going to kind of try whatever the reference object is. In this case, you see how it's the quad body. That's the target right there. It's basically going to try to take this new geometry and suction it to the other surface. What's really cool, though, is if I go to tweak, I can just go back in here, and I can just tweak these vertices, right? Now, you'll notice that your snap tools are on. And I haven't actually updated speedretopo in a while, so I think I'm actually going to update it to 2.9. But if sometimes you find that the snap tools get in your way or behave weird, you can turn them off, right? So you see the snap to faces is on up here. But you can see how you can go in here and you can easily just kind of tweak your existing mesh on here. Now the nice thing is you can go to your mirror and make sure clipping's on, right? And that way, as you drag these in, they'll clip. So remember, make sure to turn your clipping on for your mirror. And you'll see that we could easily just, and I can go to 2 for edge mode, and we can tweak this a little bit, right? Sometimes, like I said, I turn the magnet off, so it just behaves itself a little better. The shrink wrap does a good job of having it stick to the surface anyways. But sometimes, I usually like to have the magnet off because of shrink wrap if I change those up. But sometimes the magnet's cool. There's times when shrink wrap behaves a little weird, and I'm like, all right, let's maybe turn that on temporarily. Now the cool thing is, you notice I'm using just the tweak tool to shape it, and that's still sticking to the surface. I can easily select this one and this one, and I could do bridge, right? Right-click, bridge edge loops. Boom. Go back in here and tweak. And all of your normal modeling tools can be used here, right? So I could easily just go in here and select a couple of edges here. Control E for extrusion. Maybe R for scale, E for rotate. Control E for extrusion again. And you see how because of shrink wrap, that's sticking to the surface? Of course, I can hit Q again and go back to here. So remember, you can actually still use your normal modeling tools to get this stuff to work. Oh, I'm going to toggle back to tweak tool. So because of shrink wrap, your normal modeling tools will stick to the surface. I can go back to 2, and I could double click on the edge loop, move it up. Double click, I could move that up. Your slide tool actually work with these as well. So if you want to use slide, you can do that. Alt C for loop cut. And you notice if I loop cut that in there, you see how it sticks to the surface. So you could easily use kind of that Bsurface and annotate function to start to actually kind of build this up. In fact, just to show you how cool this can be, D will take you back to the annotate tool. And if you keep hitting D, it toggles through the different annotate tools. There is one that's red. That allows you to erase a curve. Like if you drew a curve and you don't like it, just keep hitting D until you get kind of what looks like the pencil backwards with the eraser end there and red, and that will allow you to erase. And then, of course, D will take you back to the starting one. And you have a line one. If you want to do straight line annotation curves, you can do that. So believe it or not, D will turn you to your annotate tool. Like I said, it behaves weird when I first started, so I usually just turn it on manually. But after that, it should work fine. And you'll see what I could do is I could just kind of draw, left-click drag, draw a curve in there, right? And then I can go back to tweak tool. Now, if I'm in vertex mode, I can actually select this vertex, this one, and we'll do range. And if you go to add Bsurface, it actually will connect, kind of bridge from those selected vertices to that curve. And then, of course, recalculate normals. And if we want, we could do a little bit of a 2 for edge mode, Control E for extrusion, middle mouse. It should clip those. If not, you can just come back and tweak it a little bit. There is an auto merge on technically, but sometimes the threshold's pretty low. So I tend to turn that threshold up a little bit. I can go to vertex mode, tweak that a little bit, and it'll auto weld, right? So there is kind of an auto merge feature, which sometimes I feel gets in the way, so you can always turn that off and on. And once you start getting used to kind of how speedretopo gives you a couple of extra functions, a little more of an interface right out front for this, lets you use kind of the annotate feature, and then you can just use your normal tools like loop cut, bridge, extrude, move, rotate, scale. You actually get a pretty cool retopologism workflow. It's quite good. But you see how kind of neat that could be? We could build our own kind of little armor and gear. So we're going to use this to eventually rebuild parts of the actual body, but it also is really useful just for building armor and gear and clothing on a character, right? So that's how we're really going to kind of use it initially here, and I'll spend some more time with it with you guys tomorrow as well. All right, so it's 9:32, so it'll be a great place to stop. So let's stop.